Konnichiwa, Nihon Cricket Pod do yokoso. Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of the Japan Cricket Podcast. First up, I should apologise for the break between pods of late. It's been pretty busy with some actual cricket taking place at the Japan Cricket HQ in the last few weeks, which has kept all of us pretty under the pump. I'll get around to talking about today's guest shortly, but since the last show, we've had the small matter of the Japan Premier League take place. And despite the weather doing its very best to disrupt matters, the tournament did get enough games on to give us a winner, and that was the East Kanto Sunrisers. It was a second victory for the Sunrisers in the JPL, their first coming back in 2019, and it was hard earned in the end. On day one, they were shot out for just 82 in 15.5 overs in their matchup with the South Kanto Super Kings. However, they fought back hard, and although the Super Kings looked well on course at 45 for 1, 2 wickets for Kento Otodobel opened the door, and suddenly it was mayhem in the Super Kings ranks. Wickets started to tumble, and at the same time, the rain began to fall. 45 for 1 became 57 for 5, and as the rain got heavier, the Duckworth-Lewis calculators came out. However, nobody could quite keep up with the action, and at the start of the 19th over, the Super Kings needed 10 runs with 4 wickets in hand and were ahead on the DL par score, only for Sanjaya Yapabandara to sneak one through Nanda Kumar Rangasamy to put the score at 74 for 7 when the umpires took the players off. It then transpired that with the fall of that wicket, the Sunrisers had edged ahead by a single run on the DL score and would end up being awarded the win. That mattered because ultimately the final was washed out, and although both teams would go on to be undefeated for the rest of the tournament, the final that would have been a rematch didn't take place, and so the trophy was awarded to the team that finished top of the group stage, which was the Sunrisers. On such small margins can tournaments be won and lost. The Super Kings did take home all the individual awards, however, with today's guest, Alex Shirai-Patmore, taking home the Best Batter award, Piyush Kumbhare the Best Bowler, and Sabarish Ravichandran the tournament MVP. The North Kanto Lions were a much improved side and ended up in third place, well captained by Reo Sakalano Thomas, and backed up in the batting by Lockton Yamamoto Lake and Shotaro Hiratsuka with the ball. Away from the JPL, the Japan Cricket League Division 1 has been beset by rain as well since I last recorded. Round 3 managed just 2 matches out of 6, with Tokyo Rangers coming out all smiles as they managed to knock over the Tokyo Falcons by 5 wickets, chasing down the Falcons' score of 179 all out. Kasun Ganesh with 3 for 16 for the Rangers, and Anubhav Srivatsava making 52 for the Falcons. A half-century from Saqib Hassan set the Rangers on their way, and that win puts them top of the table despite having played a game less than most other teams. Early days, of course, but they have made a great start to life in Division 1. In the other match to be completed, the Alpha Quashers earned a good win over the men in blue, mainly thanks to an outstanding opening spell from Gurman Singh, who bowled his full 8 overs on the trot, which included 5 maidens, and he picked up 2 for 7, as MIB were reduced to 32 for 6 in the 20th over. There was a recovery of sorts, but a total of 132 is rarely enough in the top flight, and 39 from Rohit Kasari was enough to lay the foundations of a successful chase for the Quashers, who got home with 3 wickets and more than 10 overs to spare to earn a valuable bonus point and a first win of the season. As always, I like to take a glance around the other results, and there's a lot of T20 stuff going on in the Japan Cup, which can all be followed on the JCA app, so do download that if you haven't already. One game that really stood out, though, was in JCL Division 2 between Kawasaki Knight Riders' first 11 and the Wyverns' second 11. It was not a good day for the Wyverns bowlers, as Shubham Shukla, fresh from a pretty disappointing JPL for both him and the West Kanto Hurricanes, struck the highest score in 10 years in the competition, and the 4th highest ever, with a, brace yourselves, 94 ball, 171 runs. He smacked a ridiculous 14 sixes, and combined with Naveen Gore, who himself made 123, put on an opening stand of 303 in 29.2 overs. Now, I don't have the records for opening partnerships in Division 2, but I'm going to hedge my bets and say that's the biggest. Certainly, I don't remember seeing a 300-run partnership across any of the cricket played in Japan in my time here. So, well played, those 2 guys. Needless to say, they won the game pretty comfortably, and Shukla even picked up the final wicket to seal victory. There's also been a lot of women's cricket with the J-Bash All-Stars up and running. In the first match, Haruna Iwasaki stole the show with a 47 ball 74, while Shrunali Ranade grabbed 4 for 24 as Team Pink made 162 for 5, and then restricted Team Yellow to 142 for 2, despite 57 not out from Nao Tokizawa. In the second match, Iwasaki was in the runs again, this time making 85 off 65 balls to help her team post 154 for 2. Ahilia Chandel was the standout bowler with 1 for 17 amidst the mayhem, but that total proved well short as Erika Oda and Mai Yanagida put on a 94-run opening partnership before Mai was dismissed by Iwasaki for 46. Erika would go on to finish 93 not out from 54 balls, which was a career best for her. Those games are all streamed live on the JCA YouTube channel, so do go and check them out. You'll also find highlights of the JPL matches that were completed on there as well. Now, on to my guest this week, Alex Shirai-Patmore. This interview was recorded back in the depths of winter, and it turned out to be, I think at least, quite a significant one, as Alex hinted that he was keen to return to the Japan national setup, and that led to some further conversations along with his attendance at the Japan national squad trials in March, before he was indeed brought back into the squad in April, which is the first time, I think, in around 8 years. At that time, just 9 players were named ahead of a hectic schedule of JPL cricket, followed by a 3-day training camp during Golden Week. And the final squad was announced last week, which seems to have got people talking and created a bit of genuine excitement around the talent available to Japan at the moment, which can only be a good thing. Do go onto the JCA website or socials and have a look at the squad. 24 players have been named this time, and should be a busy season ahead. More on that for another time, though. But for now, do enjoy hearing Alex's story. It's a bit longer than most of my episodes, but given Alex's experiences, I think there's plenty in here for anyone interested in the Japanese game. Right then, I'm joined today by a cricketer who has quite the CV in Japan cricket circles. Since the Japan Cricket League Team of the Year was formed in 2015, this player has featured 6 out of 7 times. In the 2013 Japan Cup Finals, he was named Player of the Tournament. He's been the Japan Cricket League best batter 3 times, 2015, 16, and last year in 2021 when he averaged over 100. He's Japan International Cap number 66. Mr. Alex Patmore, welcome onto the Japan Cricket Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Alan. Pleasure to do it.
Cool. Well, mate, let's get straight into things. I like to start at the beginning in these chats. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your early life and your background, of where you were born and where your parents are from and things like that.
Yeah, so try to keep this as brief as possible. I was born in Japan, born in Tokyo, and after 9 months, my family up sticks and went back to the UK. My mum's Japanese, my father's British. They met over here. Had my sister 9 years before me, so they were living here for a long time.
So no real memories of Japan in the early days then?
No, my first memories would have been probably about 5 or 6 years old when we came back for a family trip. So,
did you come back and forth a bit as a kid?
Just a couple of times, but yeah, they're sort of really memorable sort of family trips back a totally different place to growing up in the UK, obviously.
Okay, so when did you come back to Japan then? Like, when did you move here sort of full time?
So the first time I came back as an adult, I'd finished university. I got my teaching degree, taught for a little bit in the UK, and just wanted to come out. And I'd never lived outside of the UK, so I wanted to experience living in another country and also to sort of connect with some of my Japanese roots, which apart from a couple of family visits, I didn't really have. So I came out in 2010 for 6 months, just as a sort of a gap year, and went back to the UK. Went and worked again in Sheffield, in Yorkshire, but realised that I wanted to spend more time in Japan, and came back again late 2011, again, which was supposed to be for perhaps a year. And here we are in 2022. So common story, I think, for
sounds familiar,
many of us.
Cool. Okay, so then let's talk about your cricket background. I'm guessing you learned all your cricket in the UK. So can you tell us a bit about your earliest memories of the sport and when you first picked up a bat?
So I've been told apparently that even as a toddler, I'd just sort of sit there on the sofa watching the Test cricket with my dad and granddad and family. So don't have any memories of that, but one of my earliest memories, I think, is coming back from the supermarket with a little plastic or wooden cricket set that you can buy in shops in England. Just sort of 3 stumps, a little bat, and a tennis ball, painted, and just playing in the garden with that all day. Must have been sort of maybe 3 or 4 years old or something like that. Apparently, I played in the garden all day Got heat stroke, was in bed the next day with a high fever. And then the following day I was back out in the garden. So it was my first, yeah, before any other sports, football or anything else, cricket was the first thing I got into.
So you would have come through the English system then. I guess there's probably quite a few of our listeners who don't really know how that structure works. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your playing career, if you like, in England through till, I guess, university before you started traveling again?
Yeah, you're right. I don't think there's too many players in Japan who have come through the English system, maybe more sort of Australia, New Zealand, and people you've had on your podcast talk about those systems. So it really varies as well, depending where you are in the UK. So I grew up in Norfolk, which is a minor county. You have sort of the 18 first-class counties in the professional system, and then you have all the others known as minor counties. I think they've been rebranded to national counties or something.
Have they? I might have missed that because
Yeah.
I mean I'm from Cornwall, right? So Cornwall is very much a minor county as well.
I can't remember if it was Cornwall, but I think Devon is. Devon were always quite strong minor counties, as Norfolk as well. So growing up in Norfolk, I think the rest of the country sees it as a backwater, not just for cricket as well, but lovely part of the world, with actually one of a really strong sort of cricketing setup throughout the region. So I went to state school, so there wasn't really much cricket there, and my cricket was introduced through local clubs. So I started out at the most local club, maybe about 6 or 7 years old. Got taken along, and then went to one of the when I was about 14, I think. I went to one of the bigger sort of regional clubs in Norfolk called Vauxhall Mallards, and they've had quite a few players come through the system. Played there until I went off to university in Sheffield, and joined a cricket team up there called Sheffield Collegiate, which has had a few notable players down the years as well.
And I imagine that must have been quite a shift because they like it tough up north, not like us soft southerners. Play a different brand of cricket up there. Was that a bit of a culture shock?
So what I'd been hearing was that so down south we didn't get much chance to play sort of the northern counties, even through sort of junior age group stuff. It was rare that we'd sort of be in our sort of southern part of England. So when I went up there, I was expecting a lot of tough cricket, a lot of sort of grisly sort of northern stereotypes, should we say? But actually, in fact, the league I found myself playing in, the Yorkshire Premier League, there wasn't actually that much different in terms of standard, but in terms of also attitude. But I consider myself fortunate to have sort of played in a couple of different cricketing cultures back in England.
Over here, you've always been a wicketkeeper batsman. Was that always the case? Were you a keeper first, or were you a batter first, or how did that evolve?
Well, just being since young, just you want to kind of do everything when you're playing in the garden. So actually, I got into the into the Norfolk, the county age group system as a leg spinning all rounder.
Okay.
So my first game for Norfolk, I was selected to bowl leg spin, and I came in at number 9. So I was a batter number 9 and bowled. I think I took maybe 1 for 20 odd off. Quite expensive, but we had a collapse and came in and sort of guided us over the line. I still have quite vivid memories of that first game when you get sort of the county shirt and the cap, and
yeah, right.
Think you're walking out to play for Test cricket or something like that. It's a big moment for a 10-year-old. So
definitely.
Yeah, did the leg spin and tried to do everything for as long as possible. Leg spin, keeping wicket, and batting as well. And then finally yipped up or gave the leg spin away around about 14 or 15, and it's now absolutely dreadful.
That sounds very familiar. I have a very similar tale of my own. I was very much a leg spinner in my early days and had a fair bit of success. And then, yeah, got the yips at about 16 and went back to the very military mediums, which have not been seen for quite some time, thankfully. Um, but yeah, so then you've been opening the batting over here. Was that a gradual process that you kind of worked your way up the order?
I think I'd see myself as an opener when I was a kid, and the first time I was put into open, I think it would have been for Norfolk under 12s. I'd been a middle order batsman the year before, and they just saw something in me before I saw it in myself, and shoved me out to open the batting, and just remember being incredibly nervous about it, not wanting to do it. But from then on, people saw something in me that they thought, yeah, I could go in and sort of, back in those days with the red ball, tee off the red ball and get through and build a platform in those longer forms of cricket, whether it's 40, 50, 55 over cricket, stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a gradual thing. I don't think it was natural, but it seems to be where I've found myself for most of my playing career. Yeah.
So your club cricket in England, then, what were you predominantly playing? Was it long, limited overs games, like say 55? We used to play 60 over games in England at one point. I think they even played 65 overs at one point. But did you play any multi-day cricket, or was it predominantly limited overs?
Yeah. So there isn't just sort of one. I think there's more drive towards like homogenizing the system in England these days with 50 over cricket played on Saturdays in league cricket. But yeah, I just remember back in Norfolk, the sort of the Norfolk cricket leagues, they were sort of 50 over cricket, or maybe the lower down you went, and they would go down to about 45. But the East Anglian Premier Division, so made up of 3 or 4 counties in the east of England, they played 120 over cricket, which was the team batting first could bat for about 72 overs if they wished. And so there was some sort of declaration tactics involved. And then up in Yorkshire, in the Yorkshire Premier League, it was 55 over cricket when I was playing. So quite long days. It taught you how to build an innings. And then a bit of 2-day cricket came in with the county stuff around, I think, under 17s. They play sort of 2-day competition. So those were always experiences when you're 17. Group of you and your mates traveling to the other side of the country, staying in a hotel for a couple of nights, coming back the next day to carry on playing. So yeah, a little bit of experience playing 2-day cricket.
Do you think that's a really good grounding in terms of like refining a technique and getting actually to know how you play, compared to these days where basically kids are just sort of thrown into T20 stuff, and the guy who's got natural hand-eye coordination stands out, and a lot of other people might not get noticed and might not get the opportunity to have that grounding that you mentioned of having time to bat?
I think so. I think I'm probably biased in favor of that opinion. When I grew up, T20 was a midweek evening play for fun kind of thing before any sort of professional competition started popping up. So I certainly think so. I think it to me, that's sort of the purer form of cricket, and I think sort of the newer stuff I might have been slightly left behind with it. So definitely in terms of what it builds in terms of perhaps character. They always talk about Test cricket being sort of the ultimate test of character, not just skill. But even with 50 over cricket, longer form cricket, I think it builds up not just a desire to sort of see the ball crashing over the boundaries and things like that. I think it teaches sort of patience and sort of how to construct an innings, definitely.
Yeah, kind of stuff that cricket was always kind of held up as, being the best example of, isn't it? Of those kind of patience and waiting for the right ball to come along. Whereas these days, doesn't matter what the ball looks like, it's got to go.
I'm careful to sound too much like a dinosaur, and things were better back in my day. But certainly, I even playing today, I feel I know more about cricket when it's the 40 over or longer formats than the 20. I'm still sort of trying to come to grips with it.
Anyway, we'll fast forward a little bit to cricket in Japan. So you said you came over here kind of permanently around 2011. Was that when you kind of discovered cricket in Japan? How did you find out about the game here? Were you expecting anything to be here when you came?
So the first inkling I had of there being cricket in Japan was, I think it was about 2008. And I was watching a test match between England and I think it was South Africa. It was just on the TV. And I think it was at Lord's, and maybe there's other people who can verify this, but they panned to one of the boxes at Lord's, and the commentator said, "We have the Japan national cricket team in attendance today," and just I couldn't believe it. I never could have imagined that there was cricket in Japan. So that was the first inkling that I had that there was cricket in Japan. And so when I came to Japan, I did a quick Google and just contacted the JCA and said that, hey, play cricket in England. I've got Japanese heritage. Is there anything available? So first thing, I think Alex Miyagi, he met me near Tokyo Station, introduced himself and explained about cricket in Japan, and things went from there. I've got two early memories. The first one is a Japan national training session on the roof of Nishimachi International School in downtown Tokyo. And it was at night, and you sort of the Roppongi skyline as a backdrop. And I remember just sort of standing there with getting ready to play cricket and thinking how crazy that was. So that's
bad, isn't it?
So yeah, that.
And your other earliest memory?
And the other earliest memory would be my first game down at Fuji for the Wombats. That must have been a couple months later, in early April.
So how did you end up playing for the Tokyo Wombats, and what are your earliest memories of being in that team, being part of the club?
So it goes back to the Nishimachi training session that I went to, and at that training session at the time was a big burly Australian from Perth called Alex Shirai. You might have heard of him. And I got
Grumpy Wombat.
Got chatting away to him, and I'd explained at the time. He might have mentioned this in his podcast episode, but I got chatting to him, and I'd explained that I was thinking about perhaps joining Adore, one of the other clubs there. And he said, "How about you think about the Tokyo Wombats? We're a predominantly Australian team. Come along and have a go." So that's the path I ended up taking. Could have been a very different path or last 10 years had I not followed the Grumpy Wombat. And yeah, a couple months later, there's my first game down at Fuji against Adore, as it turns out, which was very interesting. We got rolled for 100. And
tell us about that game.
So just for any player coming to Japan, the first, I see it every time we have new members join every year. Jumping in the van, heading down to Fuji, stepping out and sort of seeing the Fuji backdrop and scarcely believing you're about to play a game of cricket in Japan. So it's all quite surreal. And then playing against a team of Japanese players as well is again something that you don't expect to ever happen. So it's all quite surreal. It's all scarcely believable. And then we go out to bat. I think I might have been opening with Jared, which again was an experience in itself. Never been used to even leaving a couple of balls outside off stump through to the keeper and being encouraged and being told I was doing well at the other end isn't something I was used to in England. Sort of the constant commentary. But we were batting fine, and I remember just sort of Jared also, he was playing with that helmet, and he sort of tried to cut one behind point, and he bottom edged it into the AstroTurf straight back into his mouth. So there was some blood on the pitch. But he was fine. He carried on. And then I was facing. I drove one back past the bowler, but it sort of hit Jared in sort of the shoulder or the chest, ricocheted over to mid-on. I still called him through for a run, which was tight. And I think we back in those days we had self-umpiring, and I think Ronnie, stalwart of Japan cricket, might have been on his phone or something like that at square leg. Here's a big appeal. Jared was just about in, but panics and gives him out. So running Jared out in my first game, then quite a dramatic win. Ronnie actually goes and takes 5 wickets to help us beat Adore. Kind of laid the foundations for lots of banter, lots of abuse, and good times with the Wombats ever since then.
Yeah, we heard a lot about that in season 1 with Jared telling us about the history of the fun on the Wombats bus and all that. So yeah, you said that that first experience kind of cemented your relationship with the Wombats Cricket Club, and you've been part of it now for 10 years, I guess, coming into 11 now. And what's been the challenges? I know that you've been part of the committee there. You've captained the club in previous seasons. What have you found to be, I guess, the best things about doing it, but also the biggest challenges you've encountered?
The best things are obviously making friends with, again, coming back to just playing cricket in Japan, making friends with people that you'd never have even met had you not moved to another country or taken up the sport when you came here. So cricket, it's always been my pathway to sort of making friends and involving myself in a community, whether it was back in England or here in Japan. So the best things, making friends and meeting people from all over the world. Wombats has become a lot more diverse in terms of the countries that the players come from. So that's been great. The challenge has always been it's been a small club and keeping the numbers up, and in my opinion the quality of the Japan Cricket League has steadily increased over the last few years. So trying to sort of balance that sort of club ethos that we have, that we like to be a different club to all the others in Japan, contribute to that sort of diversity in the league, but at the same time trying to keep the quality, remain competitive as well at the same time.
Yeah, I think Wombats has done a pretty good job with that. I mean, certainly helped by the amount of runs that yourself and your opening batting partner last year, Richie Bracefield, seemed to regularly appear in the top 10 run scorers of the league, and mentioned at the top of the chat your own records in the best batter achievements and team of the year pretty much every year. I guess it's good to hear you say that you feel the standards improved. So as an experienced cricketer from the UK, where would you put the Japan Cricket League now in comparison to the standard you play at home?
That's a really tough question to be able to answer with confidence. It's something I've always thought about, including my time with the national team, where if we were playing in sort of the cricket structure back home, whereabouts would they fall? So yeah, listening to Jared's one, where we have different opinions on the standard of cricket and how it's gone. I wasn't here in the earlier days in the late noughties, but certainly from 2012, thinking back to that first game, I think the last few years the standard has definitely increased with the expansion of the competition to so many more teams. That 2012, that first season, I think there were just 6 teams. I think it was a one division league with 6 teams. And now, you've got a three division competition with practically about 30
teams this year.
So not to say that all of it is improved, but definitely I think that the top division, not just in terms of quality, but in terms of how it's run and organized, I've seen sort of big improvements. Where it would fall, it's really hard to say. I was thinking about some of the national stuff and playing against sort of Papua New Guinea, which was probably the highest ranked team Japan usually gets to play against. And this is probably controversial, It's not based on too much, but just thinking about the bowlers and batters I saw, they might be either sort of a minor county team or um, a very, very, very good or strong sort of Premier League team.
Mm.
That'd be sort of where I put it with Japan, with the JCL.
I think it's difficult, right? Because you look at the JCL and every club has got at least 2 or 3 really pretty good players now. So I think if you're picking a JCL best 11, it would be good to see how that would go, whether that would be able to compete. Minor county standards is an interesting sort of place to look at it. I guess Premier Cricket in Australia, or maybe a step below that. It's always interesting just to get people's take because, a lot of people playing here haven't seen cricket outside of either Japan or just Japan and their home country. So it's always interesting just to get other people's takes on that. I guess from someone who has been around now for the best part of 10 years and seen the changes and seen the improvements in the structure and the growth, as you mentioned, where would you like to see the game go next in Japan? What kind of structures would you put in place, or what tweaks would you make to try and improve things?
Yeah, having seen it come so far in the last few years with more divisions, more teams, more strength in depth. As you mentioned, that it felt like back in the day, if you saw off 1 or 2 bowlers, you could sort of cash in on the sort of the second, third change bowlers. Same with some teams that you felt that if you had you got one batsman out, you sort of into the tail from 4 or 5. So teams definitely bat and bowl. I think further down in Division 1 anyway. As for what I'd like to see in the future, it's hard to have sort of on the one hand, there's sort of a wish list, or wouldn't it be great if, that some things might not be sort of realistic or achievable, like more grounds, sort of having a ground in Tokyo or Yokohama would be, and like sort of a pavilion and a clubhouse and all those facilities. What I would like to see is perhaps the diversity maintained in the league. I think that's one thing that's unique to playing cricket in Japan, is that you could play against the Wyvern, predominantly Japanese team. You've got several sort of Indian teams that you can play against as well. So coming up against different cricketing cultures in Japan, I think, is a unique selling point of playing here. So I'd hope that in the future that there's still teams or players from all over the world, and I'd like to see that maintained. So just diversity of
cool.
Indian, Pakistani, Sri Lankan, Bangladeshi, Australian, Kiwi, just people from everywhere playing in Japan. I'd like to see that continue, and maybe some clubs, including the Wombats, keeping sort of a unique culture as well. I think that adds to the richness.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope that having events like the Embassy Cup, which was where I last saw you back in the last year, I think hopefully things like that helps to introduce those communities to each other as well. Like we've seen the Nepalese community have really come through off the back of participating in the Embassy Cup, and they're now looking to get their teams into more competitions and stuff, and hopefully that just helps bring that kind of melting pot together. Okay, moving away from the off-field and back onto the on-field stuff. You had a pretty good year last year. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you averaged over 100 in the JCL. Prior to that, it had taken you quite a long time to score your first 100. You seem to be getting a lot of 90s. And I remember you mentioning to me after you got that first one that it was good to get that monkey off your back, as it were. Was that something that had bothered you, getting that first 100, or are you easier on the more focused on the team results and the personal milestones don't bother you that much?
Yeah, it's a bit funny that as you mentioned, I got quite a few 90s. I think there was one, maybe 2013. I think I got 99 for the Wombats in one game against Sano. Tickled one down to fine leg, ran through, and the finger went up. So that was that could have kicked that little statistic in the bud early. But to be honest, even that game, I didn't know I was on 99. I never know really what I'm on. after 50 when it goes up. So I've been to ask what I'm on. Sometimes the drinks come out and someone in the team says, "Do you want to know what you're on?" And I always try to make a point of saying, "No, I'm not bothered." So on the one hand, yeah, of course, it was nice to finally get that 100. Again, I didn't know I was near it. But given the way I bat, I like to think I do sort of put the team's interests first, and think about what's going to give the team, the Wombats in this case, the best chance of winning the game. And I think usually that involves me trying to bat deep and bat as long as possible most of the time. So yeah, when it came around, it was nice, sure, but it's not something that I'm too fussed about. Like last year, again, I think I got a 98 and hold out on the boundary in one game. Wasn't too fussed. And then I think I got 97 not out against the Falcons. And
yeah,
I think you can see me at the end when my batting partner hits the winning runs. I'm absolutely chuffed. Like we chased down 250.
It was a tie game, that one.
That's way more satisfying. People said, and you're a bit pissed off. You got stranded on 97, and not at all. I was just really chuffed, really proud.
Glad that it wasn't in vain.
Yeah, really proud to have just saw that one home.
So the way that your record's gone, particularly last year, were you doing anything differently? I mean, from looking at your numbers, you seem to very rarely get low scores. So how do you go about approaching the start of your innings? And is there any like little tricks that you might do or methods, approach you might take that other people could learn from, do you think?
Honestly, I don't know how last year came about. I remember the year before I didn't really score too many runs, and I distinctly remember traveling down to the first game last April. I was taking the Shinkansen down to Fuji. I was just sat there, pretty convinced I was going to get out first ball. I was pretty confident that I had forgotten how to hold a bat, and I'd sort of made peace with myself that I was just going to have a good day out, and if I got one run or survived a ball, that would be progress. So possibly by making peace with that, it kind of just sort of cleared the mind. I hadn't really
took the pressure off yourself.
Took the pressure off, and cricket's such a mental game. You might come back to that question a bit later.
Well, it takes us straight into it, actually, really, because pre-season anxiety is something that got you onto another popular cricket podcast. The Great Cricketer is perhaps a show that people who listen to this might also listen to, and you wrote a letter into them a few years back now about your dreams you were having before the start of the season, if I remember. Tell us a little bit about that.
Just almost every year, just a few weeks before the start of the cricket season, we'd just have that common cricketing, batting anxiety dream of being next into bat and not having being able to find the gear or not being able to make it out into the middle. And it's quite common. It's well documented. I think a lot of batsmen have that dream. So this one time, just it was different, and I'd actually managed to get out to the middle. I was having a net session or something like that, and first time in my dreams, I was sort of carting the ball everywhere, and I thought there's some humor could be derived if I sent that into them, and also added on that the next innings I played a horrible pre-season game where I scratched around and got about 10 runs, playing nothing like I did in my dream. So I said, should I perhaps retire? That was actually just before I did score that first 100. So must have been a psychological breakthrough. So yeah, that was entertaining. I sometimes still think about writing in some other stories, observations that they could derive some humor from. I think here in Japan and in England, we've got a few maybe.
Yeah, I reckon
after hours anecdotes.
A few stories.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, we'll move away from the club stuff because, as mentioned again at the top of the show, you were the 66th player to represent Japan at international level. That came in 2012, so just a year after you'd sort of settled in Japan. And your first tournament was the World Cricket League Division 8 in Samoa, which was 50 over stuff. What was it like, first of all, being picked, and secondly, going to Samoa?
I think it still is. It's one of my highlights when I look back on my cricketing experiences around here in Japan and in England. It'll remain one of my most cherished memories. That trip, being picked first of all, was again kind of surreal because I was still quite new to Japan, and this whole cricket thing was just still playing, and traveling up to Sano or down to Fuji was still often quite hard to believe that, I was strapping on the pads here in Japan. So yeah, going to Samoa again, just adding to sort of I can't believe I'm playing cricket in somewhere like this for Japan. Just a stunningly beautiful place, and really, really fond memories of the cricket as well. We were really competitive in that tournament. The team.
Yeah, well, I had a look back at some of the scorecards. Sorry to cut you off. I had a look, and you're playing a group which included Belgium, Bhutan, and Suriname. So I think you played Suriname in the first game, and then in your second match, you're up against Bhutan, and continuing the theme of you making 90s, made 91 in your second game for Japan against Bhutan. And we won all of those games, so topped that group. What was the team environment like?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of my memories of that is that there's an excellent team atmosphere on that trip. We had, I think we were led by Tatsuro Chino back then, but just a combination of some senior players, senior Japanese guys, some senior foreign guys as well, and sort of just a blend of youth and experience, as well as Japanese players and a few foreign-born players. So just, yeah, really fond memories, not just of the cricket, but of the team bonding outside at dinners and breakfasts and everything like that. So we did really well. We got to the semis. It was a shame to not get to the final, and I think that would have gotten us through to the next division or the next tournament. So bittersweet in many ways. That, yeah, wonderful tournament, but we missed out on perhaps being able to do that again a few months later in another part of the world. So
yeah, it's a shame because the World Cricket League I thought was a brilliant structure, a great setup. For those who don't know, it was started in 2007 with initially 5 divisions as a way of 50 over World Cup qualifiers. It grew at one point, it was as many as 8 divisions, and actually that tournament there in 2012 was the last Division 8 tournament that there was, and it was the last time Japan played in the World Cricket League. They slowly cut down the divisions again, and in 2019 they scrapped it altogether, which is a massive shame. But playing against even those countries that I just mentioned, Belgium, Bhutan, Suriname, played a semi-final against Ghana, and yeah, they got over the line in that game, and then you ended up playing Belgium again for the 3rd place playoff, which is again a game that Japan won, but is more famous for Mr. Alex Patmore becoming the first Japanese men's centurion. So he made 101 in that game. Do you remember much about that?
Yeah, I still remember that there might have been something to play. We thought there might have been something to play for in that game, because I think the 3rd place team, had there been another Division 8 tournament the following year, and I think that was still up in the air, to win that game would have allowed us to have stayed in Division 8. I think the finalists went up into Division 7. So although it was a 3rd place game, it seemed like there might have been something to play for to stay in Division 8 for the following year. And yeah, it was quite a lot of the mornings in Samoa. You'd get sort of morning rains, and so the ball would be it'd be quite slippery. The ball would be sort of hooping a bit, and I think we ended up slipping to about 20 odd for 5 early on. I think I opened that game, so just watching just a bit of a collapse on at the other end. So there was no real thoughts of getting a big score, just sort of trying to take it as deep as possible. And I think I ended up putting on a few runs with Alex Miyagi. I think he might have been batting about 7. and we sort of steadied the ship.
I'm going to pull up the scorecard. So yeah, you've opened the batting, and he has come in at 7. Correct. Alex has made 28 of 79 balls in that game, and you guys, it's 39 for 5, and you guys put on 121.
Right. So yeah, I remember. Yeah, we were in a bit of bother, and it was just sort of let's sort of not think about getting too huge a target, and just sort of batting time, just keeping the scoreboard ticking over, working up in sort of partnerships of 10 run targets. And so, yeah, I think the conditions got a little bit easier. Bowlers may be tired, and just sort of stuck it out quite close to the end, I think. So yeah, that's again something that I'm quite proud of. Doing that day was not just to get the 100, but it was more satisfying to sort of dig the team out of that hole, and get it, which put us into a position to win the game. I think we won by about maybe 20 odd runs in the end.
Won by 10 runs,
10.
And a young leg spinning sensation by the name of Makito Taniyama took 5 for 55.
Yeah, I remember
Getting Japan over the line. You finished that tournament as leading run scorer. Played against some handy players in that tournament. So coming out there is obviously quite impressive. I guess it'd be good to know how satisfied you felt off the back of that, but also any lasting memories from that tournament, from any of those games.
Yeah, it was satisfying to, again, bittersweet. So knowing that you did contribute to a couple of wins for Japan, that felt very good. But at the same time, in the most important game, the semi-final against Ghana, not being able to get in and get us over the line was a big disappointment. But yeah, looking at the teams, not just the ones that we played, but in the other side of the draw as well. There was Samoa, Vanuatu, teams we played in the warm-up games as well. So just being at the ground, because all the grounds were next to each other, and then seeing this display of different coloured kits, like the Bhutan team, the Suriname team, Norway, I think there was, Ghana, Samoa, Vanuatu, all of these teams. Again, it was just sort of what an amazing experience. And yeah, overall, just extremely fond memories. Just would have been great to have won that semi-final. Ghana just strangled us, really choked us in that second innings. From what I remember, that we just couldn't score. We couldn't increase the rate. We didn't have to chase too many, maybe about 190, but none of us could get in and really mount a strong challenge. So that's the one regret. But overall, yeah, just such a great trip. I have one other regret. That that came just before the Bhutan game in the group stage. We had a day off. We had a rest day the day before the Bhutan game. So I took the opportunity to go snorkeling near the hotel in absolutely beautiful, South Pacific tropical waters. You don't get too much of that in the North Sea growing up in England. So wanted to go out, I wanted to snorkel, see the coral reefs, all the fish and that. So beautiful, blazing hot, sunny day. So I go in, I get the snorkel rental, and don't worry about the sun cream, because hey, I'm going to be in the water, right? And snorkel for probably a good 40 minutes to an hour, around about sort of midday, staring down at the fish, forgetting that my back is floating along the top of the surface of the water. And so that mid-afternoon, I remember just looking down at my shoulders and my back, and it's gone bright pink. And in a bit of discomfort that evening, and even during the night, couldn't sleep very well, because it was blistering. Didn't want too embarrassed to tell anybody about it. So even the next morning, as we were warming up, I was thinking, I'm going to have to tell someone here I can't play. A bit similar to as an England player in, I think it was the 90s, Chris Lewis, who had to miss a game with sunstroke because he didn't can top up his tongue grip on his head. So that was going through my mind as well. You know, people watching on from home, like following the scorecards at home. It's like, why are you not going to play this game? Well, I went snorkeling and burned myself to a crisp. So I remember even like going out to bat and just sort of taking guard and just patting the bat on the ground and just sort of feeling just intense pain in my shoulders and thinking, this is awful. We went off for rain, I think after a few overs. I might have been about 10 or something, and just went to the drinks container and just started rolling sort of fizzy cans of pop because they were cold, just on my shoulders to try and settle down the burn. But I think probably that the feeling of embarrassment kind of made me more determined that I had to prove something and actually go and score some runs. So I managed to get 90 odd, I think, off the back of burning my back to a crisp.
Well, that's pretty impressive. All right, so then following on from that tournament, the next one came pretty soon. I mean, that was September 2012, and in sort of January, February, I think it was, in 2013, there was a T20 regional tournament in Auckland this time. And this time, you know, I guess perhaps tougher opposition, perhaps a less favorable format for Japan. 1-4, lost 2. You got a half century against Indonesia in that event. A couple of things I'd like to ask around that. I mean, what was it like, first of all, playing a second tournament so soon after the first one in a different format? And, you know, what had changed in that time?
Firstly, for me, it was just exciting. I'd loved the experience in Samoa so much. I was really looking forward to having another go, and to seeing another country as well. I'd never been to New Zealand before. What changed in those few months? I think we had a couple of the senior Japanese players, Chino and Amigo. I don't think were able to go on that trip, so we'd lost those. And then some rules had changed where the foreign-born players weren't able to go as well. So which from the previous trip was Jared Shearer, Daniel Mee, and Hanif Khan. So they weren't on that trip as well. So that team, the nucleus of the team that had done so well in Samoa, was kind of taken out for different reasons. And I was a big believer in. I think Japan's gone back to this recently, and you know, if you've got, while preserving the Japanese identity of the team, having 2 or 3 committed foreign-born players who've been here for a long time can raise the overall standard of it. So we went into that tournament with a really inexperienced young team. Some of the names now look quite impressive, like Taniyama, I think, and possibly Takada, and a couple of others who've gone on to better things. But at the time they were 16, 17. So going up against, I remember Fiji, for example, it did seem sort of men against boys. And referring back to those foreign-born players, we just lacked depth in the batting in a big way. So that was a tough tournament. I ended up finding myself captaining, I think, that in that tournament. So it was quite a turnaround from Samoa a few months before. So still an enjoyable trip. Again, to be able to see another country. I had fond memories of a day out with Takaro and Satoshi Nakano. We took a day out on a rest day. Went to Waiheke Island, and spent a day around there. So again, an opportunity to see another country, play against again, an opportunity to play against Papua New Guinea, for example. So it's kind of nice to know you played against a team that made it all the way to the World Cup last year as well. So some fond memories.
A lot of the same players as well, probably.
Yeah, they were still up and coming then. So yeah, fond memories from that trip. But yeah, much tougher. The cricket, probably the format as well. And overall, yeah, it was tough to back up from Samoa 6 months before.
And that ended up being your last tournament for Japan. You weren't able to go on the 2014 trip to Lismore. From what I remember, sort of work was, you changed jobs, I think, and having some challenges. I mean, I look back at it now, and in the space of 15 months, Japan played 3 international tournaments. I think we've played 3 international tournaments since then, in like 8 years. So there was certainly a lot more cricket being played back then. And how much of a challenge, as you got older and sort of settled into Japan and into a career, how much harder has it been to balance sort of cricket and work?
Yeah, I think there was also a tour in 2013 to England as well. It wasn't an official
Yeah,
tournament.
it was.
So
Yeah, it wasn't an ICC tournament, but it was just a tour.
yeah, yeah, tournaments and trips were coming thick and fast at that time. So when I played in Samoa and Auckland, it was my first year of being in Japan. I was over here more for the experience than the career. So I was younger. I was teaching English, and I could just sort of take time off work without really worrying too much about my career prospects. Obviously, hit the bank balance pretty hard, taking unpaid 2 weeks leave. And by the time that 2014 Lismore tournament came around, I was close to going back to England again to sort of resume my teaching career, but managed to secure a job back related to my teaching qualifications. So I had secured a history and geography sort of teaching position. And whilst working at a school, you often get pretty good holidays. When a tournament falls during term time, it can be harder to get that time off. So obviously there's pros and cons to being a teacher. I'd been at the job for about 3 or 4 months. I didn't have my feet under the table to then sort of turn around and ask for 2 weeks of unpaid leave in the middle of the term. So that was a shame. I would have I was still involved in the squad at that point. I think the MCC came over just before, and I was still involved in those matches. So yeah, it's the career started to prioritize over being able to sort of take off and play cricket. So I've immense respect, admiration for the boys who can, who devote so much of their time to cricket, where they have to take time off work, away from their families, often unpaid leave. That's a huge commitment. So yeah, that 2014 one just came too soon into a new job. Had it been a couple of years later, I probably would have. I felt I had enough credit in the bank at the school to say, hey, can I go play Japan? And so I do regret not going on that trip.
So having seen how things have progressed over the last few years with the Japan side, is that, something you still have ambitions for, getting back into that and playing for Japan again? Is it an interest, or have you kind of moved on from that now?
Yeah, I'd love to play for Japan again. Just to actually play and represent and contribute. But I think the likelihood is that there's too much in the way in terms of career wise and balancing work life commitments. Also, I think probably the game's moved on in that the focus is on 2020 tournaments, and while I still think I can contribute in that, perhaps there's enough boys, enough players to do a good enough job. So I think compared certainly to that 2013 tournament, there's a lot more strength and depth in Japan to burn out the team. Maybe if the ICC went back to 50 over cricket, I might have something more to offer. So yeah, it'll be great. It'll be wonderful to play again. It'd be such an honor. But yeah, I'd imagine that ship probably has sailed now.
Okay, well, look, we'll wrap up there, and we'll go on to some cricket specific and Japan specific questions that I like to ask all my guests when they come on. So you mentioned right at the start of this chat about some of the players you've come up against or have come through some of your clubs back in England. Can you tell us the best player that you've played with or against?
So I think I'm pretty chuffed I've got this far into the interview without having dropped a name or two yet. So they might just come out in floods. It's something
in a wave.
It's something that we obviously gave at the Wombats. We gave Richie Bracefield some stick for his podcast for his episode last season. So this is probably the bit where it will all come out thick and fast, and I'll be expecting retribution in kind from people like Richie and Jared for sure. In Japan, I think I've been lucky to have opened the batting with two two extremely talented batsmen, and we've complemented each other well. Firstly, Gavin Beath, he used to be the captain of the Wombats and played for Japan. Or he played for Japan also, and then pretty much just as he left Tokyo, Richie Bracefield came in. So it was good to see him last year. I think finally sort of show us what he could do on a regular basis. So in terms of batting and partnerships in Japan, I've been lucky to bat with those two guys, the Wombats, for most of my time here. Yeah, back in England, even in Norfolk, even the backwater of Norfolk, there was back in the day some ridiculous money floating around league cricket. We, as I said, I mentioned I played for Vauxhall Mallards. They no longer exist actually, but they were around long enough for Ollie Stone to come through. Just England bowler Ollie Stone to come through. And he played when I was still there. He was about 12 or 13 years old, so still pretty young. But there were some silly players, just even in sort of not even in the Premier Division, Division One. Remember we came up against Ross Taylor, playing for the opposition. He hit some of the hugest sixes at tiny little postage stamp grounds in sort of rural Norfolk, and he did that to us as well. I think we were lucky. We actually managed to get him out for about 60 odd. He managed to walk past one from our slow left armour and managed to sort of clean him up with the stumping. So me and he's a good friend of mine, the bowler, and we can still talk about the time he managed to bamboozle Ross Taylor. Just at my club, we had two overseas pros. Quite a lot of them in those days came from South Africa. So our second team overseas pro, I think in 2006, was Lonwabo Tsotsobe, the left arm seamer who went on to some success for South Africa in the one day ODI format. So that was pretty interesting to keep to him. He was pretty tasty. But yeah, there's a weird quirk of English cricket, sort of provincial cricket back in the day, that you had these sort of benefactors, chairmen who'd be willing to pay possibly up to like £20,000, $20,000 to an overseas player, which has its pros and cons. You know, some would just come over for the cash and not really involve themselves in the club. The best one that we had, and then for my cricket development, was at the Vauxhall Mallards, was a guy called Pierre de Bruin from South Africa. I think he's actually Namibia coach now.
Yeah, he is.
But he really involved himself and you know his methods, and I believe they still are now. Some people get on board with them, and some people don't quite fancy it. And that he wanted everyone to work really, really hard at training. Being 15, 16-year-old into cricket, me and a couple of other boys similar my age, and we absolutely loved it. The fact that he'd absolutely, you know, go hard at us in fielding drills or with the throwdowns, and like sort of really push our limits. And it wasn't for everyone. He just wanted to come on a Wednesday evening after work and have a few gentle throwdowns. So he obviously ruffled feathers, but he was very, very good for my cricketing development. And then when I went up to play in Sheffield, playing in the Yorkshire League, I was lucky enough to play at a time when a bunch of players were coming through in Yorkshire at the time. So the likes of Bairstow, Adam Lyth, Alex Lees, or I think Ajmal Shazad as well. So all of these sort of players in and around Yorkshire, and who got a go for England. Gary Balance as well. Can say that got to sort of see them up close from behind the stumps and how they went about the business. And then at Sheffield Collegiate, I joined them when I was 19 in 2007, and it was great timing. They'd been quite a successful club. They sort of won the National Club Championship about 5 or 6 years previously, but their wicketkeeper had just retired or had just moved away for work. So I was able to go straight into their first team in 2007, and we had a game, pre-season game at Chesterfield, just actually North Derbyshire, and I turn up and there's a bunch of sort of grizzled older men, older gentlemen, sort of in their late 30s. So they're a team that were sort of on the decline then. And there was just a young lad in the changing room, looked about 12 or 13, didn't think much of it, and we'd won the toss. We were having a bat, and he starts padding up, and I didn't realize he was actually playing for us that day. It's like we were sending out a 12-year-old to play this first team cricket. Turns out he was 16, and turns out he was Joe Root. So by the time I came out to bat at 7, he was still there on 80 yard, and even he looked like he looked very young back in the day.
Yeah, I remember when he made his England debut, it was just constant talk about how young he looked.
When I walked out to bat at 7 or 8 or something like that, he just sort of fixed me a look in the eye and said, "This is what we're going to do," and it was disconcerting. But I think he was about 15 or 16, but it was the look in his eyes that you realise, okay, there's something about this lad. So yeah, I'd probably have to say it was about 3 or 4 years seeing him come playing with him at Sheffield Collegiate, and then seeing obviously what he's gone on to. Again, I can look back on that and say that was a privilege to play alongside and sort of see that up close.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Any more up your sleeve, or are you done?
Yeah, should have. I gotta think about the abuse I'll be getting from some people. So try and leave it at that. It's all condensed into one. Hopefully condensed into one segment of the podcast. But on the other hand, maybe some people, they that's what they do want to hear. We all have sort of interesting stories.
I think it is. I think it's great. People don't know this sort of stuff, about the guys that they're playing with and against in Japan. They've got experience playing with and against guys of that caliber. And it brings me to my next question, which I've asked everyone. I've had some quite good answers from this one. Is the best thing you've ever learned from a coach? It may not necessarily have been from a coach. It may have been from a teammate or even just someone you came up against in a league game once. Any nuggets of gold that you might have got from anyone along the way?
So I'll go back to that the overseas pro player coach I had at Vauxhall Mallows, Pierre de Brain. He also took on our county age group as well, and we had as a minor county, we often had an inferiority complex when we played against some of the first class county juniors. And I think we were playing away at Leicestershire, who, watch out, name drop, Stuart Broad was playing that day. We had an inferiority complex against any of these first class counties. He saw that in us, that we didn't believe we could actually go out there and perform on the field. So he pointed over to the Leicestershire group and said, "Do you think there's anything different about you?" And reminded us that they also performed natural sort of human bodily functions, just like the rest of us do. And that's something I'd also like. I don't know, maybe it's different now for Japan, but I remember back at in Auckland, I think we felt that against some of the teams. I remember just sitting at breakfast, and the Papua New Guinea team or the Vanuatu team would come down for breakfast, and a lot of the boys would sort of stare at them in wonder. And I think that would be a good tip for many of the players here in Japan as well, to remind yourselves that at the end of the day, it's 22 yards. It's play the next ball on its merits. Don't sort of play the reputation. I've tried to remind myself of that at times.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, a couple of slightly random questions. Favorite shot?
Other people probably say the forward defensive. Maybe I'll expand that into perhaps a cover drive seems to go all right in Japan. Back in England on slightly faster wickets, I did like the cut and the pull, but in Japan probably have to be the cover drive, I imagine.
Your first thought after being dismissed?
First thought after being dismissed, I think it varies. Sometimes it can be sort of frustration with yourself, disbelief that you played that particular shot or didn't execute it right. Other times, it can rankle. It can sort of hold over you for quite some time. But I think as I've gotten a little bit older, there are sometimes where I can park it. as soon as I've walked off the pitch. And in Japan, there's usually something to be getting on with. You probably got to go give someone throwdowns or score or do something like that. So prone to the occasional temper tantrum for sure. But again, in Japan, you don't have changing rooms to sort of hide that behavior. You can't hide it away. So you have to sort of keep it in check most of the time. Not perfect, but most of the time, I think I just about get away with it.
Real highlight?
Like just mentioned throughout this podcast, really, I feel fortunate, privileged to have played cricket in a bunch of amazing locations around the world. Back in England, just playing at some wonderful grounds. Same here in Japan, to play under the foothills of Mount Fuji. The opportunity to play in Samoa and in Australia and New Zealand. There's been real highlights. Playing for Japan, obviously, Samoa, that really stands out. Playing a couple of games for Norfolk, of the senior men's team, back in sort of the mid 2000s, is probably like the highest I managed to get. So, and then meeting players along the way, whether they went on to have amazing careers, but then also just meeting people with such interesting stories about their creative experience here in Japan. So all of those things wrapped up, it's hard to pick just one.
Yeah, cool. Is there any loss that still particularly rankles?
There is actually. There is one loss here in Japan that does still rankle. It goes back to the first season, 2012, that I played here. And it's quite a bit of an ironic bookends. It started the first game against Adore with one of our players mistakenly given Jared run out. And then fast forward a few months to the JCL final against Sano. And we only had one neutral umpire that day, Chris Thurger, I think it was. So we had to self-umpire from square leg. And we'd batted first, and we'd got about 240 odd, I think. So quite an imposing score. And Sano team back then was very different. But Daniel Mee, also of Japan, national team fame at the time, early on in his innings, he was run out by he was run out by quite a distance, and managed to, not through no fault of his own, still pick himself off, dust him down, and face the next fall, and went on to play a match-winning innings. I think if you'd had the live streaming back up then, that might have gone a bit viral. So there are other ways to lose the games where a decision doesn't go your way, or someone nicks off and doesn't walk. And whilst you can feel upset about that particular one, and the manner of it does rankle a bit. So would have been
not the first time that particular run out has been mentioned on the podcast.
So yeah.
Funniest thing you've ever seen on the cricket field?
Funniest thing, this was back in Sheffield. This bowler for the opposition, he'd been sledging us all day. He'd been sledging me as well as I'd been batting. He'd dropped me at cover, and then he went out to bat. He went out to open, got a first ball duck, and then you thought his day couldn't get any worse. But he had to go and act as a runner for his captain later on. By then the game had gone, and he was so cheesed off with proceedings that he'd forgot to ground his bat whilst their captain was taking strike. So we got the message through to the spinner to bowl a rank wide, which I collected sort of 2 feet outside off stump, and just went back to the stumps and whipped the bails off. And so the next 5 or 6 seconds, all of us with that pitch of laughter, a certain kind of laughter where you're all cackling at the hilarity of it all, before firstly the batsman and then the runner realized what had happened. I'd never seen sort of 10, 11 guys just rolling around on the pitch in laughter. At that point where you've got 300 on the board, they're 100 for 8, and then that happens. It's delighting in someone else's misfortune is unfortunately part of cricket sometimes. But after the game, it was all good. He was able to laugh about it, and they made him down the dirtiest pint I've ever seen as well. So he could see the funny side of it, and his captain did a couple minutes later.
Classic club cricket. I think you've answered this already. Favorite format to play and to watch?
Yeah, just to be able to watch the Test cricket. You're lucky in Japan with a lot of English with the Test cricket that it starts at 7 p.m. So you actually get to watch more
It's not
Test
too bad to
cricket
watch.
here in Japan than back in England. 'Cause it's always on at a good time. Yeah, T20, I can take it or leave it, to be honest.
Favorite teammate?
I'm gonna have to say Jared Shearer, just for making the Fuji days worthwhile. Sometimes
Very good.
he comes out with the odd gem every now and then.
Can you name one innings played by someone else that you wish you could have played yourself?
I know this just sounds like picking your mates, but I think that's a common theme on these podcasts. So I'll name check Richie Bracefield. Some of the innings that he plays at the other end makes my job a lot easier as well. So he takes some of the run rate pressure off of me. Last year he was bombing quite a few. The Falcons game, he didn't get his highest score. He got 80 odd that day, but that day he batted beautifully.
Okay, we'll move on to some Japan specific questions just to finish things up. So you've been here over a decade now. What's your favorite thing about Japan?
There's so much to like about Japan. Just the thing that comes off the top of my head is how convenient everything is here. In terms of you can feel safe. You know when the trains are running, and all of those things that perhaps if I ever do leave Japan, I'll certainly miss. Leaving my bike sort of unattended outside a shop, and having a high degree of confidence that it's still going to be there in a couple of hours.
It'll still be there. Any particular place, any one place that a visitor has to go to?
If you're into your winter sports or you're into hiking in the summer, I'd really recommend going to Hakuba in Nagano Prefecture. It's got some of the best skiing or snowboarding conditions, arguably in the world. And then in the summer as well, it's extremely great place to go and escape the heat. So I'll say Hakuba, Nagano, Japan.
Still not been. Favorite food over here?
Again, I try to think about when I leave Japan, what am I going to miss first thing, or what will I want to have if I don't leave in Japan? And it's got to be sushi for me. That's the thing I used to want to have whenever I could come over here. So
yeah, definitely. Any particularly suspect food that you might have encountered in Japan?
It's not a food per se, but the first time I had amazake here in Japan, that took me by surprise. Like it's a real sort of fermented rice liquor, and it was actually it was at Hatsumode at Kamakura for the New Year festival, and I went with my grandparents when I first got here, and my grandfather passed me this drink amazake, and one sip of that, it was to try and get to the bottom of that cup was a real effort and chore, and I didn't want to let him down, so I managed to just about finish that off. I've had it since, and it's not my favorite drink. I can just about stomach it these days.
Okay, and your last one. What's your favorite Japanese word or phrase and its meaning?
I like hearing the cricket phrases that I grew up with, the mundane, inane cricket phrases, but coming out of the mouths of the Japanese boys. So just remembering, chance kuryo back in the day playing for Japan, just hearing, just the inane encouragement boys would give. It translates across languages. So yeah, there's a chance coming. It's a chance kuryo. Shuchu, like concentrate. Just this inane banter that translates across languages and cultures. So they stand out to me from the cricket.
Yeah, I think that stuff's great. Cool. Alex, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast, mate. It's been great to chat and to hear your story. And yeah, look, season's coming up. I hope you have a good one this year, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you on the field some more soon.
Thanks for having me on, Alan. Look forward to hearing Series 2. Series 1 was really enjoyable.
Nice one. Thanks, buddy. That concludes episode 4 of season 2. I hope you enjoyed hearing what Alex has to say about his time playing cricket in Japan. Remember that if you enjoy the show, it would be great if you could give it a rating on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts on, or even go one better and write a review if you're on Apple Podcasts, which would definitely cheer me up, as long as it's a nice review. The purpose of this pod is really to grow the fan base of Japan cricket, so any ratings and reviews would just help other people to find the show and hear all about the great things happening on and off the fields in Japan. Thanks as always, and until next time, arigatou gozaimashita.